well, we get asked a lot as an agency, oh, could you help us launch our product or service? And we go, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Have you done this? Do you know who your buyer persona is? Who do you know? What was your marketing message? What's your value proposition? And sometimes we get a blank look, and we go, well, we're going to charge you £2,500, and we can tell you what we can help work with you all that. And they go, well, I haven't got that. I need that money for the implementation. Well, that's fine. That's why I put the course together, so that you can do a lot of the homework yourself. So today we are going to cover, we're going to go through this process. Got quite a lot of slides to get through, so it's going to be quite packed. So if you do have a question, please put it into chat, and well, I'll pick it up and build that into the presentation. But we're going to look at the overall process. Then we're going to understand the opportunity. And the thing is, there's an associated course, an introduction to a free course, Introduction to Marketing Strategy, which tells you the how and the why and the how. So the why and the what, sorry. So there will be some more expansions. And then if you want to know it in great detail, then there's a £95 course. We'll look at value proposition. The value proposition, the message, so critical, and things that people don't spend enough time on. And it's something that you can do yourself. And then how to minimize development times. Number of people I've met who go, well, I just need to do this before we launch. No, stop. Get an MVP out, minimum viable product out there, get it tested, like we're doing with the app, like we did with the courses. Had numerous people kick the tires on it. I've been through it now twice in terms of checking it out, editing it, and so on. And I'm already going to add in the next month or so the ChatGPT section, because I think it's going to be highly relevant. And so because it's an online course, it's broken into bits, I can easily update it. And this is what we look at. You get something out there that works, that's add value, and then and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Oops. Something wrong with the animation there. Okay, so the overall process. So we obviously need a clear marketing strategy. Why are we doing it? Then we're going to look at segmentation. You've got to be really crystal clear. So sort of a person I know quite well, he's had a bit of a rough time, but he now wants to get a business going again. I said, who are you selling to? And he might as well put the world. So we'll be taking him through to this. He'll be going through this process, and then we'll be having a conversation about market really is. Who's his ideal client? What market research you can do. Get as much done as you can. The buyer persona, as I said, the value proposition. What is the story behind your brand? How are you going to convince somebody to onboard you? We're going to be talking about minimum viable product or service. So important. Got to minimize that development time and maximize the timing of engagement testing. Finding that friendly audience, getting those initial sales, and then adjusting the features and messages, and then looking at how we can put a plan together, a financial model, because you're going to minimize the amount of cash that goes into this, and what the initial marketing campaigns are, get the data, test it, and then adjust your campaigns. And then you can go for the right, okay, we're going for it now. This is from this slide is from the Introduction to Marketing Strategy. It's quite detailed, but I'm just going to run you across the top. But these are all the elements in it. And if you have a look at when the app's ready for launch, the app will take you through all these things. But first of all, you've got to figure out, what do you want to achieve? If you're not passionate about what you're doing, you can't expect your customers to be. And then we're going to look at external pressures. 20, 30 years ago, this was less important, but with so much pressure from outside, what's happening environmentally, what's happening politically, what's happening economically, all this stuff needs to be thought about, because you don't want something I mean, COVID blew us all sideways. Some people benefited, some people didn't, unfortunately. And it's looking at, what's going to work in this new environment, because it has changed. When I've been doing the marketing, the next presentation for the next one, it's surprising how much has changed. Some of it's been insidious, and some of it's quite dramatic, like let's say the ChatGPT. Then what is our strategy? How are we going to cope with all these external pressures? So there's various things like looking at, you're going to sell the same to the existing market. You're going to sell different new products to your existing customers, etc. Where on the product life cycle are you selling to people in the late majority who, want to make sure it's tried and tested and before they actually spend any money, or are you looking for innovators and early adopters? When you're launching a new product, generally you're talking at the front end, which is the innovators and early adopters. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And then how are you going to communicate it? Who's the buyer persona? What is it that's really important to them? What's the value proposition? And what's the message you're going to give them? And then implementation. How are you going to make it happen? So one of the things that, there's a thing called Blue Ocean Strategy. And one of the things that is super important is that you don't dive into a market that's already crowded. Or if you're going to dive into a market that's already crowded, try and create some uncontested market space in that market. I mean, the obvious examples is Southwest Airlines and EasyJet. When they came out, that was, they identified there was lots of people who wanted to travel but couldn't afford the prices that the traditional airlines were doing. So they launched, I think it was about 30 quid a flight, when traditionally it's £200 a flight. And everywhere, oh, how did they do that? Well, they stripped away a lot of stuff that that people didn't really need. Like everything went online. They used booking. They're one of the earliest booking engines. I did have a play with it at the time. I thought, my God, you do have to be quite dedicated to do this, because where online systems were a bit flaky, but they were successful. You didn't get a seat. You had to jump onto the plane and find your own seat. And you could take your bags on and so on. And the turnaround times were a lot quicker and so on. They did a lot of things that meant that they could get volume through, and getting the volume through meant they could get their costs down. So how can you create that uncontested market space? How can you make that your competition irrelevant? So you're not competing with other people. You are, you've found a market that's it's not always possible, but you need to do the best you can to do that. Otherwise, you head on with established people in the market, and that's where the costs come in. We were working with a fintech, and they had uncontested market space for a couple of years. And I know then a new entrant came in, and their pay-per-click, Google pay-per-click advertising spend has gone up purely because of the consequence of a competitor coming into the marketplace, and the quality of leads has fallen because of that. So you're constantly having to innovate. So even if you're an established company, then looking at what else you can do for your customers is so important. So that's Blue Ocean Strategy. So the way to do that is you put down all the key features that you feel you're competing on. List your. Now there's a book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game, and in it he talks about the worthy rivals. So these aren't, so although yes, we've used the word competitor because everybody uses the word competitor, but actually you want competitors who you respect. What is it they do? And hopefully in this list, there'll be things that you do really well, and which gives you the uncontested marketplace where they may not do them so well. So an example was an energy broker, and their customers were asking them all the time, well, can you do all the utilities? And that included water. And when we were looking at the analysis, it was two things came out, is that technology, not many of the rivals were using technology very well. And this particular company I was working with had built a portal, but they were a bit half not fully committed to it, and they didn't do water. So, well, you need to do water if that's what your customers are after. So you be a one-stop shop for these guys. But the other thing is everything has to be driven through the portal. And so they actually had a couple more developers. They only got one guy, and pull a lot of work into making them different. So when you actually plot that as a curve, you ended up with this. So they were up here, EasyJet were up here with things like low cost, with easy booking through the online site, fast turnarounds, so that you could use it almost like a taxi. Whereas the other ones, so the price of the industry was down here in terms of what the offering level was. And then this is what we did with this company. We plotted this, and then so up here we had technology and we had the one-stop shop. So just mute. Yeah. So then we come to now you'll see this in a few different guises, but I've sort of, the way I like to think about it is you get your segment. So if you're selling a telecom system and you're selling to medical and law and insurance, they all need the same telephone system. The telephone system doesn't change, but the message to those different markets is substantially different. We had to do a video that carried, if you like, the same essence of the message, but the message had to be, the emphasis on the different requirements were different in each of the videos. So choose your segment, so if you're selling to medical, and then positioning. So people don't often think about this, but it's really useful. So you may be selling quality services, selling at the high, or you might be selling premium services, or you might be selling low pilot high, sell it cheap type services or products, and any of those. You've got to make a decision where in that market you're going to sit. Are you premium? Are you quality? Sort of mid range, or are you pilot high, sell it cheap? Each of those affects how the brand works. Each of those affects your messaging, affects how you talk to people. And then within the sort of, say, insurance sector, it might be the particular clients within that sector who you think they're really profitable. They have a particular problem. They may be selling insurance to the insurance people. Clients may be selling to a particular client base that needs some special features in the phone system because of the way it works. So it may be that there are parts of a segment that you should be targeting, because not, segments can be fairly broad ranging, so there may be within a segment of medical, for example, there may be 4 or 5 different sub-segments, micro segments that you can look at. So it's identifying, with those elements. So I was looking at GrowthCo, the support company in Manchester. We've got a thing called Growth Flag, and we were looking at SIC codes, and and those SIC codes are quite general. They've got all sorts of things in it. So, well, I'd like to do business with those, but not those. And so we're probably looking at going to have to drill down into the sub-segments of the market, sub-SIC code, sorry, to say, yes, I'm going to want that SIC code, and be actually quite detailed in it. It's going to be a bit of a pain, but you want to be targeting and spending time, quality time, targeting those people who are actually going to be your ideal customers. So if we got this example, so it's a medium-sized businesses. So this is a business selling marketing service to larger business. We sell to SMEs, not larger businesses. So the segment is medium-sized business that need to use the service as a marketing agency. So the position is, not everybody respects quality and are prepared to pay for it. And so you need to be talking to those people in that segment who don't just treat you as a sweatshop, but actually go, we value that partnership, we value the collaboration. And specifically, that's who, when your messages say that's who we're looking for, and then that will resonate with people who are happy to work in that way, who don't want to treat their agency as a sweatshop. And then it's then saying, right, okay, which of those, maybe it might be medical or technology-based businesses who then fit that profile better. Okay. So we had an interesting conversation one time with a client. So my gut feeling, because it's to do with a SaaS product in the construction sector, and he was adamant that cost was a real issue. I said, no, it's got to be second or third on the list. It's spending more time with the family, because this app would save more time, would save time and would make life easier. And so we actually, through some research, found poll fish and sentiment. So what it actually we're able to do, so these are two US firms, but they can research stuff in the UK. So they emailed 500 people who are interested in being market research respondents. And we actually found out, we gave the client, put the questions together, and we identified that saving time, more time with the family was the most important thing, and then cost was number two. So the client had real facts to work on, and he could then, because we were going to put videos and things together, and of course the video has to hit the priority pain points. And so that was actually really useful. Cost about $500, I think, something like that, but probably saved thousands in terms of not going down the wrong road. You can use tools like SurveyMonkey. Personally, I like soft launches where you're working with people, people give you honest feedback, friendly customers, etc. To get that validation. So these are some of the actions that you could work on. So what is your strategy? How are you going to differentiate yourself? What makes you remarkable? Can you answer that question? And then how are you going to segment that market? How you position yourself within that? And who is your initial target audience? Who can you talk to who are going to give you some feedback? And are the tools out there that are going to give you some sensible feedback? You got to remember that one of the things I like is to try and sell something, because when people have to put the money in the pockets, hand in the pockets to pay for something, then that's the real test. Because you can run focus groups for as much as you want, but they're not paying for it. They're only thinking about, oh, that might be a nice idea, and so on. That doesn't dismiss focus groups, but you've got to get those acid tests done. So anybody who's been to one of my presentations before will recognize these slides. We're then going to be really focused on who we're selling to. Really focused on who we're selling to. I know Rachel, who's on the call today, we had to do a very detailed, almost spreadsheet-like thing of the buyer personas for a particular e-commerce business, going into what type of car they drove, what sports and hobbies they liked, all those sort of things. So we actually got inside their heads. Yes, there's still, even at that level of detail, it's still generalized. But then you've got things you can think about. Oh, we should be talking about this. We should be talking about that. Because different ages, as you grow older, have different requirements and different needs. It's probably more B2C, but B2B is still important, and we're going to be looking at tools that will get inside those heads. So this is the empathy canvas, understanding your customer, looking at the tasks. So you always start, if there's a thing called value proposition, which we're going to look at in a minute, and you always start with what is that person trying to do in their day-to-day role. And the bigger that task list, the better. And we'll explain a bit more. The bit I liked about the empathy canvas is is this feeling and influences. This is what drew me to this particular thing, because it's not in the value proposition canvas with Strategizer, which we are going to talk about in a minute, but it it's sort of so one of when we're thinking about customers and what they're feeling is maybe fear of not succeeding. What is that, those inner core? And we pick this up in the brand story brand by Donald Miller in a minute. So I like that. And then thinking about who influences, because so much noise out there, you've got to know where they're getting their information from. Is it good sources of information, or is it going to be biased? Is it going to be other competitors? Is it going to be other suppliers? Is it going to be the friends down the pub? What's going to, is it social media? Is it their industry magazines? Where are their key sources of information that influence them? So then I thought, well, actually, let's combine the two. So you've got the actual profile, whether that be a customer, a consumer, or whether that's business to business, and it does matter, even in business to business, who you're actually selling to. Are you selling to the MD? So, for example, if you're selling education software, you're better actually selling it to the deputy heads, not the heads. The heads are really super busy, big strategies, sort of stuff, especially in the bigger schools. So it's the deputy heads. So and that's critical, because if you don't get that, you will not sell anything to a school, because you'll always be trying to sell to the head who's just not interested. But if you can identify the deputy head who may be responsible for that area, bingo, they can usually make the decision, or certainly highly recommend a decision. So we go into the more depth on this in the free online course, and obviously a lot more depth on the paid for course. So again, actions from this, you can get this from the recording or the slide deck or the online course. Go through that. What is it that is going to motivate? What are their challenges, and what's going to motivate them, and therefore what makes you remarkable? Why should they buy from you? So we look at the value proposition. This is super important. You'll probably know it as various things. Elevator pitch. Donald Miller calls it a one-liner. It's that something that when you're in with somebody in a network, and you want them to talk about your business, but you want to get them excited. You want to get them interested. So that you don't get that networking glazed over look, and they start looking around as to who they're going to network with next. So I like Uber's, the smartest way to get around. I must admit, I live in the sticks now, so they haven't heard of Uber. We still have horse and cart, but when I was living in Manchester and I needed to get to another part of town, just tap the app, and I got the ride. You could see the person coming to you. I tried it in Shrewsbury station with the app that belonged to the local taxi company, and I gave up after 20 minutes. They hadn't even assigned me a driver. So it works in volume, I think. But so Uber's smartest way to get around, because you tap the app, car comes to you, you know exactly, driver knows where to go, they're coming, and it's all cashless. I started life as a big Windows fan, and then 8 years ago, Charlie, my daughter, said, "No, Dad, we're going to use Macs." And now I'm surrounded. I've got the MacBook, second screen, the phone, the iPad, and it's all works seamlessly together. You can't say that for Windows. So it's absolutely simple, beautiful, magical to use, and they deliver on that. So how do you deliver value? What do your customers, ask them, why do they buy from you? What is it that, why do they do that? And what makes you stand out? How are you different? So there are 3 key points to a value proposition. One is what was the job the customer's trying to do? And this is a list. This isn't a one-liner. It's as many things you can think of. Think of if you were selling software to a bookkeeper, they've got at least 10 or 12 key jobs they have to get done, and plus a list of peripheral ones. List them all out, and then articulate how your product solves those. This is all from a book called Value Proposition Designed by Strategyzer. Excellent book, well worth the read. It's about 10 to 15 quid. And it takes you through this process step by step. And there's some more of this on the free course, and then obviously more in depth on the paid for course. And then, so in there, they've got a thing called pain relievers. So everything in here that's a challenge or pain needs to be fixed by this. And then you're looking for that value add. What is it you do differently to your competitors? So the reason why Xero took off and absolutely motored over Sage, which was incumbent in pretty much everybody's business, is they did loads of this stuff. They did the bookkeeping, and they made it easy to do, but not like Sage, which was very much we will do double entry bookkeeping even if you don't like it. Say Xero still does it, just takes care of it, and then they added a bunch of other things, like connected to a ton of other applications. You could connect your bank feeds up in a 2-minute process. Obviously, it did the tax made digital very easily, and there's more to come, I'm sure. So again, actions. You can see you end up with a huge job list. So, but we've got the more comprehensive course now. That's all launched. But think about the jobs you're doing. What are the key features that take away the pain? And then what's on their wish list? What can you do that's on their wish list? So we're getting up to creating the message. So this for me was the missing piece. This is the keystone of going from your strategy, because you worked out who you're selling to, what you're selling, what's the key differentiators, to actually turning it into a message you can build websites with, you can do videos with. Because too many people are coming to us and say, well, this is what we're doing, but then we had no process or structure to get them to the point where we could then build a website that would convert for them in a one-off process. So we all understand stories. It's our sense-making mechanism. It's core to our being. And if it's laid out in a logical order, that makes life so much easier for the brain to take on board. It's a survival is the primary role of the brain, and it's constantly scanning the environment for information to solve a problem, to seek inspiration, seek acceptance, seek affection, etc. And then great stories help us to really sort of get that information and really tune into it. If somebody is being boring and not telling a story, not stringing it together in a coherent manner, people just switch off. You can see it. Just try it at a networking event. Talk to somebody, just factual and so on, or turn it into a story for the next one and just see what their reactions are. But we mustn't forget the logical side of the brain. In the old days, when you used to get a photocopy of a brochure, 3 or 4 pages were all on how its benefits, its all the whizzy things it could do, how it could make your life easier, and then the back sheet would be a list of all the features. And as somebody who had to evaluate these things, I just used to go to the back sheet and then compare them all, and cut through the actual emotional stuff. But that was my job. My job was to find kit or equipment that the client would get the best from. But a lot of people who can't be bothered with that would buy on emotion, and which is the majority of buyers. You look at a modern day car advert, it doesn't talk about engine size or miles per gallon or any of these other things. You can go onto the website for that. It shows you how it's going to fit in with your lifestyle, which is a purely emotional sell. But the logic does rationalize, so you've got to make sure the logic is there behind it to back it up. So this is the book. I totally recommend this book. There used to be a website you could go to and build it online, but as I'm going to show you, you can just use a spreadsheet. But it's about using a process to create your message, and it's so important. It builds on everything else that you've done. So the character in the story is not you. You're not the hero. It's the customer. Okay, they have problems. They have external problems, which they've surfaced and talked to you about. They have internal problems, which you need to dig for. And actually, you can go another level of philosophical problem. If you can address that, then your story is emotionally talking directly to that problem, and you'll have a far better connection. Again, the intro to goes into more detail. Of course, the full course goes into a lot more detail. So he meets a guy. That's you. You're the person with the solution. You give them a plan, how you would use your solution to help them resolve their external, internal, and philosophical pain. You then have calls to action. So you have direct calls, which is, hey, let's have a meeting, let's do an inquiry, give you a quote. Or if they're not quite there yet, it'll be, here's this webinar, here's this free course, here's his ebook, some sort of transitional one, something where you can grab their email address and slowly talk to them about various things. And then they hopefully get the light bulb moment, and then you paint them a picture of what success looks like and what failure looks like. So they need to avoid failure and hopefully see the success that you can bring them. How are you going to make their lives easier? Because we all need that. Life is getting so complicated. This is what you can put into a spreadsheet. So it's, who are they? And so we've already looked at the buyer persona. What are their goals? And we've also talked about that. And the empathy canvas has pulled out, what does they want? What are their goals? What are their objectives? The villain is something. So for example, the villain in our case is marketing noise for our customers. That marketing noise, means that they have to spend more on advertising. If there were no marketing noise, it'd be a lot easier for them to talk to customers and get their message out there. But it's not like that. So the villain in our case is a marketing noise. It can be anything that's personalized in that way. Who's the villain that's causing your customers a problem, and then you list out the problem that they're actually asking you about, and then after digging, you'll find out what that really relates to, and then hopefully you'll understand what their fears and emotions are behind these. Here's the guide where we sort of say, hey, yeah, we understand. I've done in marketing for now 20 plus years. I've been business coaching 20 plus years. Whatever it is that you've got that experience in, say, yeah, I really understand your problem. You ask all the right questions. And then the authority, we've got this credential, we've got this accreditation, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have a plan, give them the process, and then there might be some sort of agreement. If you do this, I'll do Y, and so on. And then we've got the calls to action, et cetera. And then, what is the transformation? How will they be better? So if you think about bookkeeper and buying software, they've been battling away with bookkeeper, or they might be using an old accounting system. You say, well, actually, if you PDF your invoices and send them straight through, set your bank feeds up, the time spent on bookkeeping will be a lot less, and you'll be able to spend it on other time. And I know I've seen my work transform. All invoices are emailed. I use Receipt Bank, so all my invoices go straight through. Whereas when the business was quarter the size it is now, it used to take me a day or two to do the counting. Now, it's a 5-minute job every morning just to whiz over the PDFs or create an invoice, etc. Check the bank feeds. So again, bunch of actions. Complete the storyboard for your business, and then therefore you can develop your marketing message from that. and then review all your landing pages and advertising copy. I'm going to come on to the minimum viable product or service. And this is critical. It doesn't matter whether it's a product or a service. You've got to identify, what is the value you're going to bring? What are those key things that solve the key pains? You've got to get those right. Those are got to be in the box, sort of up there, and high on the list of things that are going to get implemented. And then, what are the jobs that you need to do in order to get your solution out, whether it's a product or service? So with the app, we had 2 goes at the MVP. First MVP was about the engine, creating the marketing budgets and the plans, etc. And then I realized that actually we needed to build a process over it. So our MVP went back to the drawing board a little bit whilst we added on the marketing strategy process. But on May the 17th, next month, hopefully we'll have a quick fly through of the app, and then it'll be ready for you to have a play with. And then, what resources are needed to get to this point. So we're working with the developer, and obviously the developer's time is critical, but also it turned out my time was quite critical as well. So what is it that we needed in order to get all this to go? Now we've got something we can work with and with customers. So I'm going to look at what to exclude and what to include. So we've got things like essential, must-have components to have a workable solution, and then necessary to reach a standard product. So your MVP must be enough for them to be able to use it and be effective. And then all optional stuff and all desirable stuff becomes version 2, because you need to get it in front of the market. It was only when I did the demo of the system, well, the initial demo to the system to a potential large partner, and as we were talking it through, I realized they needed that process. So we said, all right, give us a couple of months, and we added that process to the app. And now when I took him through the actual app, he liked it because it all flowed, and there was a little bit of things not working in the flow, so we moved that to so we changed the flow slightly, and so we got fantastic feedback from him. We wouldn't have had that if we hadn't got an MVP. So important to have a friendly audience, people you can talk to who are going to give you valuable feedback, and it's about getting to speak to as many people as possible. Obviously, if you've got high level degree of intellectual property in there, you need to make sure that it's protected. But, as I was demonstrating the app, a couple of things broke whilst we were doing it, and said, okay, that's not working. We just need to make it up. I didn't get stressed about it. I just said, it's a factual thing, and just work around it, and make notes and then come back to people. But it is important that you get feedback at every stage if you can, as much as you can, because they will tell you what's working and what's not. Just a reminder about intellectual property. Super important. If you've got, with technology, with our app, it's a case of we've got to run fastest. But there are some things where you do need to think about non-disclosure agreements, trademarks, etc. It does raise a barrier to getting things tested, getting the MVP tested. But if it's that important, you need to do it. So that's why this is in the slide deck to remind people that is super important, depending on what you're launching. So some initial sales. I work with a software company a few years ago now. What we did with them was they found a customer, and it was a software company. They wrote the software for it. Then they found a similar customer whose things were different. So instead of rewriting another system for them, they then developed the system, and so on. And so over time, it developed into a really comprehensive system, but all the time they were getting paid for it. Obviously, you can't get as much money for it as a finished product, but it funds that development. So, can you sell it to somebody? Can you get a larger company to pay for it? And I've come across this quite a few times. People have built some very good systems internally, systems, products, and they've got clients to pay for it because for the client it was worth paying for. It is a bit of a nirvana. It takes, I think, a bit of luck sometimes is involved in that. So super important to get feedback. How are you going to collect that feedback? How are you going to prioritize what needs changing and what can you live with? Because you'll get some feedback and you go, yeah, that's a version 2 feedback. It's not going to stop. But if you might get other things that go, whoa, that's going to really stop the show. And then, make sure that you are measuring things. Try and get as much stats on as possible. What's working, what's not working. It's super important because you can be doing lots of stuff which you think is great, and then find that they're not using that, they're using something else, but they're really valuing that something else. So finding out how you can work out what's going to work and what's not going to work. Again, another bunch of questions. So just a reminder of all the things you need to think about in terms. So as either you're watching a presentation or whether you do the online course on the hub, this is why it takes a bit longer, because you've got a bunch of actions to do. And these are all the stages we would take you through if you were sort of working on a coaching basis or whatever basis with us. You can't, this slide deck is the minimum you can get away with in terms of launching new products or service. If you don't do this, you are putting a lot of things at risk. So a few things, this is more to do with high growth startups. It's when is that going to break even? I mean, because I've spent so much time on this, the last probably 2-3 years have been taken up with this, writing the book and developing the hub, developing the courses, etc., doing these workshops, has meant that I've not been selling. I've not been delivering. So you could quite, if we were going to be ruthless, I could probably say I've probably spent, the opportunity cost was 30 to 40 grand a year in terms of my investment in time. But it's been so important because I want to really get this message out there. Get this education out there so that people can run the businesses better. So it's when can you get the product or service to bring in cash? That's important. How can that negative cash flow? Because you obviously, if you're not selling, if you're not delivering stuff, money's going out the bank. So you need to think, well, how can I? So we've often strapped another business with another business. So one of our oldest clients started out as a cleaning company, but the husband was into pipe freezing, and over time, once the pipe freezing business had got to a certain volume, we could then drop the cleaning company. With Vision to Success, Charlie's now the MD of the Cub Digital, the marketing bit, the marketing agency, and then I'm going, and we're spinning out this business, Vision to Success business, based on the work that because I can run Cub and do that, and now I can focus now on Vision to Success. So think about how you're going to bootstrap that. We've got another guy who's at the moment, he's working, and then he's going to bootstrap his new business on the basis that he's got his day job, which pays the rent, gives him food, and then he's going to spend his spare time building the business. And that happens a lot as well. thing called burn rate. Again, this is where you don't have income coming in, and you've got an investment, and you're going to spend money whilst you're building it. And that's why it's so important. The MVP is so important. What can you get out there, and where can you start bringing in money? Because you end up with a graph like this, and your idea is to keep that short and then minimize that length of time before you hit positive cash flow, and minimize this depth. You know, what can you bring in terms of money from the development? I'm coming towards the end now, conscious of running out of time. No questions have come up. So then we have the full launch. So then that's where you put the marketing plan in place, you put the budget in place, you identify all the resources that are going to be needed from day one, you know, the website, the email marketing, the videos, the social media, you know, all those sorts of things that are going to start to get those conversions. But you've already had conversations, so hopefully your marketing message is on point, you know, and most importantly, well, who's going to drive the project? Who's going to do delivery? So as an agency, we often work with funded startups because everything's focused on the product and the service, and nobody's looking after the marketing. So we come in and take care of all that, and then over time, you know, as a thing grows. So we've got a couple of projects where we've been working with them for a couple of years, and now they're starting to bring in people. How would this work for a relaunch? Business MOT. Michael, I'll get back to you on that one if I may, because I'm not quite sure what you mean by MOT in relation to your business there. But we can have a one-to-one. Need an agile approach. Stuff changes quickly. So again, in the full course, we go into agile in a lot more detail. It's about being able to adapt and change, but do it in a systematic way, which sounds a bit oxymoron, but it's a way of working that you're not laying out big plans, you're doing short sprints, doing something, next thing, reviewing it, doing the next thing, etc., rather than going, we're doing all this stuff and we'll only know the result at the end. Agile says, no, we should be able to get little wins all the way along. And then it's a soft or full launch. So if you're opening a restaurant, you don't have no choice but to do pretty much a full launch with lots of PR, etc. But if you're launching an app like we are, or launching courses, or launching the marketing hub, we can do it bit by bit, get that feedback, build that feedback in, make the changes, and then and promote some more. And again, another bunch of actions. Do recommend flow charting your processes, either on a piece of paper or a flip chart, or using creately.com. We can do it in PowerPoint, it's a bit harder, but you know, work out how things are going to flow. And if you do the free course, it's got some bits about how to map your marketing funnel to your to what you need to do. And then if you can, develop a detailed financial forecasting model. I've done this for a few companies now in terms of launching new products, and it's a bit of a game changer in terms of getting people to think before they've spent any money, because it's 10 times cheaper to change something on a piece of paper than it is to change something in reality. And that's whether you're building a building or building a business. The same principles apply. So that's completion of the course. Always available. You'll be getting an email in a couple of days' time. And I'll say we'll pick up. There's one question from Michael. I will pick that up in an email with Michael. Just before we go, is there any questions that people want answers to? No. Okay. I'm conscious it's 12 o'clock, so I always promise that we will finish as much on time as we can. So very many thanks to everyone attending the webinar. I hope you do find it useful. The recordings and transcript will be put on the website in the next day or so. and a link sent out to everyone who's registered. In a month's time, on May the 17th, I'll be presenting on the future of marketing, and we'll be looking at the challenges. We're looking at ChatGPT and how you can use it. I'm not going to be too bothered about the challenges because there's going to be lots of stuff. There's lots of stuff already out there on how AI and all this sort of stuff. It's just another tool, guys. You know, but it's a powerful one and it's a very useful one. And we'll be talking about some of the other AI that we're already using in our business. So we're going to be looking at what's changed in marketing, giving insight into how effectively you can use ChatGPT. And we'll also be looking at the app, which we believe it's going to be a game changer in how you develop your marketing strategy and implementation plans. And for those who attend the workshop, there'll be the opportunity to go onto our beta program so that we'll handhold you through any strategy you need to do with the app. But you do need to attend or register for the workshop in order for us for that offer to be valid. And if you want to book on the next session, please go to visiontosuccess.co and go to events. So thanks very much, everyone. And it's great to see you all again and hopefully see you in a month's time. Thank you.